voice. I am your voice. There's a group called White Dudes for Harris. Have you seen this? White Dudes for Harris. Anybody know? Are some of you here? White Dudes for Harris? Doesn't sound like it. But I'm not worried about them at all because their wives and their wives' lovers are, every one of those people is audience.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another live stream. We're currently 19 days out of the 2024 election, and we got a lot to get to. That was a clip from the Al Smith dinner tonight, the traditional, every 4 years they get together and do the presidential candidates at this, Catholic dinner in New York City. It's a tradition. Kamala Harris deciding to skip it. She left Donald Trump with the open floor, and he took advantage of it, delivering some blows and kind of being somebody that could command the room, and definitely had a little bit of a more favorable crowd, it seemed, because, Harris was not there, and you had a lot more applause in favor of Donald Trump than you did the last time. But, it was what it was. I enjoyed it. We're not going to cover it too much because we have a lot of early vote data to get to tonight, and we're going to get to that data. So I will encourage you guys to like the stream down below, and we'll put the face cam on right now because Pennsylvania mail got redder today. We have to say it every time because it's true. And we'll go over Pennsylvania. We'll get to North Carolina. We'll get to Virginia looks good. Ohio looks good. Florida looks good. Michigan's looking better. Everywhere looks good. Arizona looks phenomenal. It's early, but it looks great. Nevada still a little bit too early, but again, we're talking about the party registration data being about, close to 100,000 more Republican on net in Nevada than it was during the 2020 election. That is a massive, massive number, and it's just huge. It's absolutely huge. I mean, Biden, same person basically, won the state in 2020 by 36,000 votes. That's gone. That's more than gone in the registration data. Ralston is saying he's not touching it. He said tie, maybe a tie would go to the Dems, but not anymore. He is too cowardly to face his followers. John Ralston, the Oracle of Nevada, correctly predicted the Laxalt-Lombardo split when nobody else did. And I honestly think it was mainly because he has a personal gripe with Laxalt. He wrongly predicted his race in 2014, by the way, for being this oracle. But he does typically get it better than most. He gets credit where due. He's definitely more on the left. But, you can tell when he's not willing to cross that line this late. He doesn't want to sow division amongst his following. That's what you get. You get somebody that says, actually, I don't believe that Kamala Harris is going to win. Because if he did, he'd say it. And that's not a swing state we need. It's not a swing state that, I would say it's one of Trump's better ones. And that means he probably is sweeping the Sun Belt. And we're going to get into this. But we have the Georgia data. Comes in. It's whiter than it was yesterday. It's more rural than it was yesterday. And it already was significantly more white, rural, and exurban compared to where it stood this day in history in 2020. The Abrams machine is gone. There's no black enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. There's no enthusiasm. And it begs the question, maybe when you switch out your candidate at the last second, there's going to be an issue. Because you had somebody people, obviously may not have voted for. He may not have won, Biden, who's definitely not winning the polls. But you had somebody that people knew, and you replaced them with somebody that people don't know, but they kind of know, and it's not like positive. They don't get to be a generic Democrat like Biden in 2020 got to be. And she's out there. She's forced to answer questions. We saw what happened on Fox. I covered it in a video. We're not going to get into it too much unless we get into the super chats, but it is true that the betting markets did not look good. And by the way, 7 million people watched that interview. The Harris campaign is bragging about that. That's a disaster. Okay, that's a disaster because that interview was a disaster. That is her closest equivalent to the Biden debate failure. And the fact that that many people saw that It's not good news. She did not win votes from that. She lost votes from it. Maybe not many of them. Probably not many of them. But she's in a position where she needs to gain significantly, and every opportunity, she doesn't have an answer for anything. And to be fair, what can you really argue against without lying like a lunatic? You can't. You can't. You have to be like a supreme sociopath at this point, and she can't do that. You know, maybe somebody like Gavin Newsom would, but I mean, even then he's overrated in terms of his political abilities. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. There's no candidate that really could come in and easily defeat Trump, and they knew it. And now we have Obama and Biden standing together at the funeral of the Kennedy lady who passed away recently. And what's the takeaway? They're sitting up there and they're saying, or apparently Biden, according to some lip-reading experts, said, she's not as strong as me. I'd be doing better. And Obama said, yes, I know, Joe. What does that tell you? It tells you that they believe, even the people that wanted Biden to step down believe, that Kamala Harris is a weaker candidate than current Biden, the debate Biden. They believe that Kamala is weaker. This is private conversation. Now, maybe it was read wrong. It is hearsay without the hear. It's hearsay. It's say. I don't know. But what we do know is that they're in a bunch of trouble. They're in deep stuff. We'll say stuff. We'll be nice. But it is true. And when you look at the data that we see out of Pennsylvania, and it's not showing here's the update, because I want to get into this. Democrats have a lead, which is expected. I don't know why people are shocked. I get a lot of people saying we're screwed in Pennsylvania. It's an only male state, and you technically can vote early in person, but it's not something a lot of people know about. You have to go to your courthouse and do it. More Republicans are doing it. It'll register as a mail-in vote. And I do tell people in Pennsylvania, you want to bank your vote, get low propensity voters or people who didn't vote last time. If you know they're going to vote, get them to vote. Make sure they bank their votes early. The 4 out of 4 voters, they're more likely to show up on election day. That is true. But the 1 out of 4, 0 out of 4, you're talking about people voting in the past 4 major elections, either midterms or presidential. That type of voter, the non-voter, never voted before voter, that individual, that person needs to show up to the polls. And it may be better if they vote early to bank their votes. It's an ambush. It really is. Kamala said they ambushed me on Fox News. No, the difference is that you don't show up 25 minutes late to an ambush. You don't show up to an ambush. The ambush shows up to you. She's just apparently incompetent, and they had to wave off the interview early because she's so bad at this. She couldn't handle a little bit of pushback. She kept interrupting him. He was following up. The reason they say, oh, he interrupted. No, because look, she wasn't answering the questions. If Trump goes on any network and even answers the questions, they still interrupt him 30 times. It was a fair interview. I'm shocked. I was actually expecting a not so fair interview given the fact that Fox has that tendency, but they did a good job. And it didn't even take a phenomenal job for her to melt down, but it shows this is what happens when you install somebody who didn't earn anything in their life. Okay, this is what you get. She's been advancing her own career via her identity and other means. I think we understand what those means may be or may not be. But then she gets to where she is, and, Biden, she doesn't win a nomination. Biden just essentially is forced out. They put her in. It's like you sub somebody in who's never played a down before of football, and you expect them to lead your team to victory. I mean, look, the team has, some things going for them for sure. We don't want to underestimate them, but are we overrating their competency so far? Maybe, and maybe not. I hope we're not. I mean, I hope we are, because I'd rather keep it that way. This is not a done deal. I mean, people need to get out and vote. Otherwise, it's not going to matter. It's not going to make any difference in the world. But when you look at these numbers, not only, so you have to go all the way back to October 8th or 7th to find that time frame. Republicans have gained on net in the raw requests, not percentages, but raw requests over the Democrats. And they gained a few thousand yesterday, and they gained a few thousand today. And this keeps happening. And people want to talk about returns. Returns are a lagging indicator. Returns and requests, there might be a disparity at the end of the day. I'm not saying there's not. People need to return their ballots, but they will come close to matching it. In 2022, which was not really a good year for Republicans voting by mail, if you look at the return percentage, it was 21.1, and it was, I believe, 21.06. Now, in 2020, it was a little bit under, and you could see that there where Republicans went from 25 to 23.3. Right now, Republicans are already approaching 26. When we wake up tomorrow, I'd be very shocked if they're not at 26, if not in the mid-26 range. Democrats will be below 65. But there was a question if we'd even get to 30, that would be like major for us if we got to 30% in requests. And already out of the gate, 58 to 29, you could round up to 59, but it's under 30, and it's going down every day. You want to talk about a week ago, it was 61 to 28. Now it's 59 to 29. Already, you're going to see it at probably, I would say, on the 21st, the way things are going, you're going to see it hit 30. You'll see it hit 30. And if we stave off the returns, if we actually eat into their request firewall, we're going to eventually eat into their return firewall, presuming people return the ballots. That's why they set this low bar, this extremely low bar, because they're delusional morons. We'll be nice. We'll say morons. And that low bar was 390,000 returns. That's their bar. By the way, in a midterm year, where Republicans won the generic ballot in the state, it's not talked about, but it happened, even when you account for the uncontested races, it was a 600,000 vote or request advantage. That's lower. And in terms of returns, you can see this here. 2022, they led by roughly 600,000. That was their firewall. If that's even the firewall this time in terms of the raw returns, like it's probably not going to be enough, you could even argue, for them, depending how election day vote goes. It's not. And already now, obviously, it's early, but there's a chance that they don't even hit 400 if what we're seeing continues at the rate it's going on, which is not a sure thing, because people need to return their ballots. But what we're seeing is consistent gains for Republicans, consistent drops for Democrats. And as the raw numbers go up, they're going up slower and slower on the daily. And it's a problem for them. It's a problem for them. And it's not Pennsylvania that's mainly the red flag. It's North Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia. Those three states. Now, I don't think Trump's going to win Virginia. I'm not ready to move Virginia into the swing state category here. I'm not ready for that. But what I am saying is they're in a lot of trouble. They're in a ton of trouble in a place like Virginia. They're in a ton of trouble in a place like Georgia. And it's true they don't register by party. But the models that have been accurate, not Target garbage, we know who they are. Boner is the guy that runs it. Yeah, not really the best. 28% of Republicans in Florida, he said, would vote for Hillary Clinton. Yeah, how did that pan out? Not very well, by the way. And they do the same thing. They're saying all the Republicans requesting ballots are actually going to magically vote for Kamala Harris. Yeah, I don't think so. Do you think people are registering as Republican to vote for Kamala Harris? No. Okay, they're not. Maybe a very slim number of the new registrations will vote that way. And I'm sure there's going to be people who register as Democrats that end up voting for Trump as well. But still, that's not how it works. You don't register as a Republican to vote against Trump, especially when Trump is the face of the Republican Party. You will have some legacy Republicans who will vote for Harris, like in Arizona. There's not enough of them at the rate things are going, given the new registrations and the way they're going. And the way that we see, even in the primary, new registrations, new voters. Voters never voted before, voted in primaries, and they overwhelmingly did vote, and they voted for Donald Trump. And that is huge. And we're starting to see a little bit of that Super Tuesday magic that we love to talk about start pouring into the actual data this year. And that is something that is huge. So I don't know what the numbers are going to look like tomorrow out of Pennsylvania, but North Carolina is even better. It is not a contest. North Carolina is beautiful. When we pull this up, I'm going to pull up the mail-ins first of all to start. We're going to do the I'll put in the mail-in numbers, because the mail-in numbers are good enough, and then the early numbers are astounding. We're talking about a massive win if this keeps up. I'm not saying it will. People need to get out and vote. And by the way, the people saying hurricane, 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 because we got a lot of that, and myself included, I was worried for a little bit. Those counties are like supercharged turnout right now, and they're largely Republican counties. So very few people are without power as it stands today. Very few people were displaced. Some people were, but it seems like a lot of people are crawling over broken glass to get out and vote. And I would imagine, given how the response went, that they're not voting for the current administration, especially one that pretends that it was good and fine, or tries to blame Donald Trump for it because he happened to say that people are not happy with it when people are in fact not happy with it. So now the mail has not gotten redder every day, but it's gotten redder on net every day. And currently the gap between Republicans and Democrats in the mail-in vote in North Carolina so far, which there are a lot of NPAs, but I would imagine that the affiliation of those would mirror the split we're seeing here when it comes to their vote choice. And the same thing goes for PA. But when you look at this, it's down to 9%. It was a 30-point advantage in the midterms for Democrats in the mail-in vote. In 2020, it was, I believe, 26%. Now it's down to 9 point something. Now that's like, okay, well, Republicans are doing the mail. Maybe Democrats are waiting. They're waiting. They're going to go out and vote in person early. Well, we had our first day in North Carolina today, and I literally don't know where these people are. They're not there. They're not enthused. They're not showing up. They didn't have a big enough lead in the mail-in requests, and they're losing in terms of party registration. It's like a mini Florida there, like more like 2020 Florida than 2024 Florida. But Florida shifted to the right significantly, especially compared to the way the nation moved. And now you're seeing it in Pennsylvania to a lesser extent, but again, it's more, there's no in-person early, so more Republicans are going to vote on election day. Oz won that vote by 12 to 14 points. I think that Donald Trump very well could win that by that margin, if not more, because Donald Trump has that base that doesn't really come out for elections like that. And so many people that think they know Pennsylvania more than they really do, well, they don't take that nuance into account because they can't see past their blue-tinted glasses they have on. But when you look at this, it's like, okay, well, let's talk about the actual votes. Let's talk about places that moved away from Donald Trump, like exurbs, like suburban Charlotte, for example. Let's talk about suburban Charlotte, because we have votes out of suburban Charlotte. And we even have votes out of the Research Triangle, which is very highly educated and very, very Democrat. And we can get into those too. But what do we see here? North Carolina, Guilford County, or Gifford, or however you say it. Somebody probably is going to correct me. But when you look at this, 2020, Democrats led the early voting, which is expected. They led it by a margin of 59 to 20. Okay, and they led the mail-in vote significantly as well. Now, not only is it up, but it's more Republican. Republicans gained 2,100 from then. Democrats have fallen 1,600 from them. They've fallen 14 points. Republicans have gained 10 points. The unaffiliateds, which in that county typically are more Republican, have gained points. That is not something that is good news for Democrats. It's not good news at all for them, especially given the type of Democrat. Maybe you have an ancestral Democrat. That's some of what's in their Democrat column there. So that's not good news for them there. They don't have good news in pretty much any county that we see. We don't have the Mecklenburg data by party affiliation, but their Mecklenburg turnout is down. But the turnout in the red areas, it's up. The Republicans are showing up. They're showing out. You look at Durham, Republicans gain. Wake County, Republicans gain. And I don't know if it's on here, but there's plenty of evidence, and we have this too. Here are the colored VBM advantages over 2022. Already, just for the absentees, and you're seeing that everywhere it's more Republican, very, very few exceptions to that rule. And on top of it, everywhere we get the early vote, it's Republican, Republican, Republican. Democrats are not in a good position there, and it confirms what we've seen in Georgia. It confirms what we've seen in North Carolina or Virginia. It's a gradient. I tell people this is a gradient. This is how it happens at the presidential level. Get rid of the midterm brain rot. Remove that from your brain because it's not relevant. The midterms are not relevant. The presidential to presidential, that's a little bit more relevant. I do use the midterms sometimes as a baseline for like, are people voting earlier or not? Because it's like you have like a post-COVID year in the post-COVID era to compare it to. You can look at that and see, because and I say that because the primaries are similar in terms of the male split. And if they weren't, I would say maybe not, but they are. So, people like to try to say that that's like hypocritical. No, it's not. I'm not saying you do that. But the bottom line is people say, well, the suburbs in this state got bluer, so then Trump is not going to be able to, like, that's stupid, because, Donald Trump is not Dr. Oz. Donald Trump is not Tim Michaels. Donald Trump is not even Carrie Lake. Donald Trump is a unique character, and Kamala Harris is not a generic Democrat. She's not even 2020 Biden. She's a disaster. That's what she is. And now everybody can see it, and we understand that now, and you have the most popular version of Trump yet, and the early returns are showing it. And all the arguments I've heard for why Harris is going to win are piss-poor arguments. And maybe she can. That's the argument. That's the strongest argument. Well, it's not over. She can win. It's like, yeah, she can. But I'm not really seeing a lot of evidence. And by the way, the lower to no propensity voters, they're showing out in Virginia for the first time, and they're showing out in bigger numbers on our side than theirs in early voting. Why would they not be doing that in these other places? They should be doing it in these other places. Virginia's not in a vacuum. This is not 2021. This is not 2023. Virginia is not in a vacuum. You're talking about a presidential election. You have a lot of very highly educated people, high propensity voters in Northern Virginia. Like, that's your, that's basically your constituency in the state that's going to already kind of skew the state to the left. And even then, among even those people, are they really all that enthused? And even if you want to say they are, there's an argument to be made that there's a significant amount of COVID-only voters who did not vote before 2020. There's probably about a little bit more than 15 million of those, and then showed up in 2020. They're really not voting in high numbers. And if they are, it's because they voted for Trump, and they are still voting for Trump. Because if you showed up just because of COVID and you were upset at Trump's response, you voted for Biden, and you voted usually by mail, and the mail's way down, chances are that person may not even show up. And I'm not saying some of them won't, because I know some of them will. Some of them might grow up and vote for Trump this time, actually. But the bottom line is that they're not getting that edge. 2020 was not the rule. It was largely the exception. And you're kind of going back to a mix of the two right now, 2016 and 2020, except you have the most popular Trump ever going up against somebody who is the figurehead of the most unpopular administration since second-term Bush. That's not a winning recipe for Democrats. I don't understand why they would think it is. It takes a lot of, it just takes a lot of hubris. It takes a lot of just arrogance to believe that that's like in a good position, because they happen to believe that the entire world views Donald Trump the way they view Donald Trump. And that's not how the average median voter views Donald Trump. They don't view Trump as somebody who is evil, who tried to, they say, overthrow the government. They don't view it that way. They see the economy. They see all these issues that they care about, and they say things are better under Trump. Abortion's not enough to carry the Democrats. It's not. Sorry. It's not even a top 3 issue. And again, among independents, it's even lower. When you have the independent percentage in abortion being a top issue just 2 ticks higher than it is among Republicans, that's not good, because it shows Democrats are the ones enthused on it. But even then, where's the enthusiasm if it's enough to carry them? I just don't see it at all. I don't see it at all. So we're waiting. We are waiting. We have more data that I'm sure we're going to get. But Arizona also looks good. Arizona looks good. I mean, we have 164,000 votes now. This is not a small number, and we have a lot more to get to. I'm aware. But Democrats at this stage in the game were up big in 2020 and in 2022. And I think a lot of this is Republicans understand what happened last time, where people, an election day, they were not able to have access to voting. And now they're showing up early. But still, a lot of those voters are new voters. The new voters that are showing up for the first time in early voting, overwhelmingly Republican. And that shows that it's not just some cannibalization of Election Day vote, which even then it's still not a bad thing to bank these votes early. It's not. But you're talking about an early vote total where Republicans are running up the score in the state of Arizona, running up the score. And it confirms a lot of polling that we've seen recently, except our own poll, which is ironically the liberal one. But, it is a lot of undecideds. It was an outlier. And when you use the same exact methodology of a poll that gets a Trump plus 5, and you expect the result to be in the middle of Trump plus 5 and Harris by half a point, yeah, I think that maybe it's just the nature of the sample, law of averages. Some people say it's not a real thing. Well, do what you got to do with that. But the one thing we do know is that Donald Trump is the overwhelming favorite in the state of Arizona. And Donald Trump, according to, actually, this is the actual, we're going to get to the bad news because there's really bad news for Trump about his chances of victory, because Nate Silver, also known as Nate Plastic, is now predicting Donald Trump to win. That's horrible news because he's wrong about literally almost everything. I mean, he underestimated Trump's vote share in every state in 2020. I say it jokingly, by the way, for those who don't know. I think the fact that he has Trump up, obviously, I think he's up by a lot more than just 0.7% as like a betting odds percentage. But he's being pushed around by the left. It's funny. He has no friends. They all don't like him because they either think he's right-wing now, because he apparently might have taken money from Peter Thiel, who also doesn't even support Trump or Vance, despite the whole Vance ties or whatever. He doesn't even, I don't even think he's voting. But liberals are not the sanest group of individuals right now. But in terms of Nate Silver, it's like this guy's been wrong all the time. I'm not saying that. I say it jokingly when I say it's bad news for Trump. It's not good or bad news. It's very possible he could, if he's underestimating Trump in every state again, well, that's great news for Trump. And there's a chance he is, because that takes skill. Usually there's one or two, but both election cycles, every state, I think there were maybe a couple in 2016, like Illinois, where the polls I think were a little bit closer, didn't end up being that close. But that takes a lot of skill. That's anti-skill. That's insane. You could make a living betting on everything the guy says, bet against it. You would make a living off of that. Even when it comes to sports, he is not good at sports. He's arguably worse at sports than he is at election predictions. Nate Plastic. We call him Nate Plastic. But no, it's true. But you look at the polls now. Donald Trump leads in every swing state. This is not a drill. This is not a joke. Donald Trump leads. He took the lead in Wisconsin. He took the lead in, obviously, leads in Arizona. But that's another big poll to drop out of Arizona. 51. Trump is at 50% in 1, 2, 3 polls out of the state of Arizona. And none of those polls are right-wing pollsters. Fabrizio is right-wing, but they're teamed up with a Democrat, kind of cancels out. Anzalone's the Democrat. But you talk about the other polls, 51 in New York Times, 51 in CBS. This isn't Trafalgar's the one. I mean, they're hurting. I feel like they're being a little bearish. They want to be cautious. It is what it is. Then you have Emerson. They have Trump at 49, which, by the way, Emerson drops tomorrow their national poll. And if Donald Trump is leading or tied, that's brutal. That really shows the trajectory of the race is continuing to go in his direction. Even if it's 50-50 and we take the Nate Plastic presumption that this is a 50-50 race, Donald Trump has all of the momentum, and he's going to be parked in Pennsylvania this weekend. Rally in Pennsylvania, Penn State football game, Steelers game with Antonio Brown. We'll see how that goes. I hear he's speaking at the rally. Hopefully he has a little decorum. I think he will. Hopefully he sticks to the script. But you also have the town hall. He's doing a town hall in the Lehigh Valley. And he's just going to be there the whole weekend. He's working at McDonald's for an hour, apparently, because Kamala Harris didn't. And no, she did not. Anyone who says, well, there's no evidence she didn't. Well, where's the evidence she did? You think somebody works at McDonald's, they become the vice president of the United States, and nobody in the country has ever said, I worked with Kamala Harris. No, that did not happen. That just did not happen. She apparently worked there for a few months. No evidence whatsoever. No location. no, picture, which, I mean, that might be a little bit of a stretch to have one, but like, let's be real. She did not work at McDonald's. She is a liar. She's a clown. She's a flip-flopper. And it's not even like, it's not even funny. Like, why would you lie about something like that? Like, when Biden does it, it's funny. It's kind of funny. He's destroying the country, but it's funny. Kamala Harris is just not funny. She's insufferable, and she is going to lose. Probably, but people need to get out and vote. It's not over yet, but we have the polls, and they look good nationally. They look good. Wisconsin flipped. And I just want to touch base on this before we get to the Super Chats, because Donald Trump has been underestimated in Wisconsin by an average of 7 points in the polling the last 2 election cycles, 6 to 7 points. He's been underestimated, and right now he's leading. And it's not just a right-leaning pollster phenomenon. Quinnipiac has Trump up. Wall Street Journal has it as a tie. Emerson has it as a tie. You have a couple pollsters in here that don't know how to pull the Rust Belt to save their lives, and they have Kamala Harris narrowly ahead. But apparently it's zone flooding. If Insider Advantage, which was the most accurate poll in the state in 2020, they get laughed out because of a midterm year, because apparently only 2022 matters to the clowns in the election mafia that are trying to protect the narrative. Yeah, that's not how it works. It's not. Now, it is true that polling errors are different. I don't think Trump's going to be underestimated by 6 points or 7 points again, but can he win Wisconsin by, 3 to 4 if he has a great night? Absolutely. It's a very demographically favorable state to him, and Kamala Harris does not do well with white working class voters. There's virtually an argument. I've never heard a coherent argument for why she would even get to Biden's numbers. I don't get it. There is none. There absolutely is none. Not with this economy. And when you tell them the economy's good, and every poll shows that a majority of independents in these places believe the economy is getting worse for them and thinks that Trump would do better on the economy than Harris by a mile, then it's a problem for you. You have a problem with those voters, especially the undecideds. And there is a chance the polls underestimate Trump based on that alone. Now, it's not a done deal. It's true. People need to vote, and they are voting, but they need to keep voting. We got to keep doing what we're doing here, because what we're doing so far is working, but we need to find people, get people out to vote. The homework doesn't stop because things are looking good. It's just motivation, should serve as motivation. So we're going to get to Super Chats because we got a lot of Super Chats. We got 3,000 people in chat. Like the stream. Let's get to 1,000 likes and subscribe to the channel as well. And we're going to get to the Super Chats. Johnny Heartdog for 5 says, would massive turnout for early voting cannibalize Election Day and create a red mirage? Well, not really a red mirage, because the early voting is still going to go more Democrat in most places, if not all. Maybe not Florida, but even then the Election Day vote's going to still be Republican. The question is it going to be by as much? But it doesn't matter. Massive turnout for early voting would, to a degree, cannibalize. Yeah, it's true. But again, on the other hand, it banks votes. And Democrats, are they magically all just going to show up at 2020 levels on Election Day? It's unlikely. It's really unlikely because they're banking less votes by far. And it is true COVID's over. But there were a lot of voters who probably wouldn't have voted if the election system wasn't changed and if you didn't have COVID. And they mainly were on the left, and that's the way it goes. So high turnout helps Trump by and large, but it depends on the turnout level. I will say that. So got to keep going. So do I think it's going to cannibalize? It might to a degree, but not enough, because the argument of, it's only cannibalization is false due to the amount of new voters that are consistently showing up across the country. And that's kind of the takeaway here. Johnny for 20 says, Kamala, what do you think about the bad weather we're having? But Donald Trump, she says, and then he says, hey, Kamala, what do you think about the accident on the freeway that made many people late? But Donald Trump, Kamala, what about the wildfire in Wyoming? But Donald Trump, yeah, exactly. She has to end the interview. That's how it happens. That's how it happens every time. Every single time. It's never about answering the question, because there is no answer. There's no answer that could help. Honestly, it's the smartest thing she could do is to self-implode. They are in a disaster case right now. And this is a big IQ test for the country because I can't imagine. Like, people need to vote. That's it. People need to see this and just get everyone they know, show everyone you know, and vote. It's like the first time when a candidate gets an interview and then they break records on the viewership and you're celebrating despite it being the opposite candidate. That's the situation we're in right now. Apex Caliber says of Virginia, yeah, Virginia got a lot redder. I saw it. And North Carolina's getting redder. And it's probably going to get redder. And Georgia's getting redder. All these places are getting redder. And when you see the voting break records on day one, even if you want to say that's like early vote cannibalization, it shows that the enthusiasm is not on their side. The people that are like, I got to go vote now. It's open. I got to vote. That's our people. And now it is true that there's a good chunk of people that are going to vote on election day as well that are on our side. So either way, it's like, we'll take it. We'll take it. But we gotta keep going. We got to keep going. Patrick says, love your rep from Minnesota. Ballpark on Minnesota second. It's probably going to go blue, I would say. We'll watch the margins. There was a poll that was close that was released there, I saw. James for 10 says, do we have the information on whether Trump or Harris will host election night watch party headquarters on election night as was done in 2016? And will we know? Well, I think Trump probably is going to have it at Mar-a-Lago. I'd be shocked if he didn't. As for Harris, I don't know. The White House or somewhere in D.C., I have no clue. No clue at all. Base for 5 says, voting next week early here in North Carolina for Trump, first time voting. I can't wait. See, that's the voter. That's why we're not cannibalizing entirely. It's like this guy right here, never voted before, is showing up to vote for Trump early. That is huge. And we're doing it. Apex Caliber says, if Virginia goes to Trump, what do the map paths look like? Well, he's already there if he gets Virginia, because he's not losing Arizona, Georgia, or North Carolina if he's getting Virginia. And if he gets Virginia, he can win without the Rust Belt. But I just feel like the Rust Belt is far more likely than not. Let's see. Apex Caliber says, wait, we got another one. David Mendez TV says Ted Cruz has to retire. The Senate race is closer. Well, I mean, I'm sure he will after this cycle. But yeah, I mean, he's going to win. It's close, but he's going to win, probably by 4, maybe even 5. Depends on how the early voting goes here, too. The very preliminary returns look very solid. But, it's still early. It's way too early. Apex Caliber says Letitia James clapping like a seal, and Chuck is Grimace. Yeah, I saw the Al Smith dinner. I thought it was good. Kamala Harris's video was awful. I don't know who thought it was a good idea. At that point, just don't show up at all if that's the video you're going to put up there. I don't know what that was, but Trump, she literally missed a layup. She could have gone there. They could have prepared some jokes. They could have had a human moment or something. But it was only Trump's to do it, and he's sitting there with Chuck Schumer and all these people and shaking hands with people across the aisle and raising money and, telling jokes. And it's a good look for Trump. It's not a good look for them. Even Potato Head guy from CNN, Brian Stelter, whatever it is, he was saying, yeah, Trump had a good moment. I'm not going to do the voice, but he's got like the high pitch and everything. Basically saying Trump won the night. From these people at CNN, they have to admit that Trump won the night, and it was a missed opportunity for Harris. It was. And maybe that's just a little snippet, but maybe it's just the media realizing that, yeah, she's probably not going to win, because they know it. And at what point do they turn on her the way they turned on Biden, if they do it at all? Because it is true that we're, in the lead up to Election Day. Maybe if the media throws her under the bus, if they think it's strategic for down ballot. I don't think it is, though. But it is weird when you see all the down ballot candidates on the Republican side, they are running to Trump. And on the Democrat side, they're also running to Trump, or at least trying to appeal to his voters. Like, that's not something that's a sign of confidence, because you didn't see that in 2016. You didn't see that in 2020, unless you were I don't know, a deep red state like Montana. But even then, you could make the case Tester might lose by more than a Bullock loss by, and that's abysmal. But we got more super chats. John Waffle says, Kamala's a proven clown. We should have a chance in every swing state as well as Virginia. I think it's a small chance, but I think the chance is slowly becoming a reality. And at what point do we say, yeah, North Carolina is probably gone for the Democrats? Not now. It's too early. Way too early. But it's not looking good for them. Bomani Igloo says Snead and Feeds and Seed was formerly Chuck's. Thank you. Mike Oxarts says all we need for a cherry on top is a Joe Rogan podcast and about a dozen more swing state rallies. I think you might be getting both of those, by the way. I think you might be getting both of those. We'll see about the Rogan. I don't know if he's going to go on Rogan, but the podcast circuit, and if he does win, I think there's going to be a lot of talk about that. Because it's like, oh, well, he's not doing, everyday interviews on the mainstream media, which he's done a fair amount, but he's going on these podcasts and he's reaching a new demographic and tapping into that younger voter who maybe never voted before but likes him on a podcast and decides to vote. Like, every vote counts, and those are millions upon millions of views. Millions. Lady Freddy for 10 says, what about the writing campaign for Lyman as governor in Utah? Is Cox that bad? I mean, it's probably not going to win. If people want to write in Lyman, they can. Cox is weak. He's weak. But he's probably going to win regardless. Brett BR says she never worked at McDonald's. Exactly. I don't think it's many such cases because, look, how on earth are you going to lie about something? Like, I've never heard anybody willingly go out of their way to say and lie that they worked at McDonald's when they never worked at McDonald's. Like, is that just like a job she sees as low, like, wage that she wants to just claim? It's like, why not just say, like, I don't know. She could have done something else. She could have been like done the whole AOC routine. I was a bartender or something. I mean, AOC actually was a bartender, but it's vaguely more believable. But McDonald's, it just I don't know. It's strange, but it shows how fake she is. She's not a real person. She's inauthentic about everything. She doesn't matter what audience she talks to. She'll be, I am a Indian woman, and then she changes it. The next audience she speaks to, she'll say, I'm a proud black woman. It's like, well, you can be both, but it's like you change it on a whim this way one time, that way the other time. It's like something's, it just shows how inauthentic she is. And to top it all off, she talks in the different accents. She's got the all sorts of accents she unveils. It's crazy. 19 days, folks. We got 19 days. Got to vote. XJ Cherokee Bear says Kinzinger's clinging to his... Yeah, he is, I'm sure, somewhere. Steve Dow says Trump 50, Harris 48, national popular vote. I'm going to keep posting it until you acknowledge it's the most likely outcome. Well, I would like the outcome. I think it's becoming increasingly more likely that Trump has I wouldn't even say favored right now, but he could in a week or so. I'm not ready to make that call about the popular vote. I still think Harris probably is a narrow favorite in that, not like it matters, but we'd like to have it. We'd like to win it. But you talk about the 50, yeah, it's possible. If you want to do the polling historical model and you go 1 point below the Democrats' best polling percentage, 1 point above Trump's best, that's always what you got in 2016 and 2020. If you did that, you get Trump 49, Harris 48, somewhere in the ballpark of whatever you just said. So it's possible. I could see a Republican popular vote. I don't know if it's a guarantee, but I could see it. Mike Oxarts is looking like Republicans can have 54 Senate seats. Yeah, I have it at 54. It could be 55. It could be as low as 52. I don't think they're going to go below 52. Hopefully they add to that total. Hopefully they get up there. We just got to make sure we get these votes out. And vote straight ticket, Republican friends. Don't let friends split their tickets. As much as you may not like your average Republican senator, we'd much rather, if you want Trump to succeed, have an Eric Hovde in the Senate in Wisconsin than a Tammy Baldwin. Apex Caliber says, could Vance or Vivek continue New York and New Jersey's right turn? We're not there yet. We are nowhere near there yet. Johnny Heartdog for 10 says, if Trump only gets 268, I'll be pissed at Nebraska. I'll never vote Republican again, but there'd never be a race to vote Republican in ever again to begin with. Yeah, they're going to drop the ball on that one. That's on them, but, we still got to win a Rust Belt state for sure, because it is true. Brett BR says the Senate is going to become formerly Chuck's. Hopefully. Yes, definitely it will be. I mean, there's no way Democrats are going to be able to hold on to it. They'd have to win Montana or Texas. And if Trump wins, they'd have to win both. And I don't think they're winning either one of those two. So, and for the record, I don't think they're winning Ohio. The early vote data in Ohio is not talked about enough, but it is an unmitigated disaster for Democrats so far. There is no, even in the college-educated, high-propensity areas, they're not getting a lot of votes compared to the rurals, especially. But the black areas are the worst of all for them. You look at Cleveland, Cuyahoga County, nothing. It's like these people just disappeared, teleported somewhere else. They're not voting, and it's mainly because they don't want to. And the ones that do show up are going to be, in some cases, more Republican than historically. Tom Saff says, do you think they'll call the election on election night? Well, I think it's possible. It's not a guarantee, but it's possible. Hopefully they call it for Trump on election night, not the other way around. Tucker Corngay says, well, we know the results of the election on election night. Probably going to have a really good idea at a minimum, unless it's super close, which is going to be a little bit nerve-wracking regardless of for everybody. It's going to be nerve-wracking, like a nail-biter like that. But the Iranian Putin with a member chat, thank you. A Clever Fish says, do you think it's too late to become a poll watcher? I'll early vote tomorrow and then visit local GOP. Well, you can use the, what's it called? Go to the community tab. We have links to all that stuff, the homework. Hopefully we have at least a couple hundred people that decided to volunteer or do something just from watching that video, because it was a very important video that we did, and I'm proud that I did it. Johnny Heartdog says, with Texas, I'm guessing it's going to be Trump by 5.5, Cruz by 4. Regarding my last super chat, I agreed with those saying it won't happen. Well, I disagree with you on Texas. I think 5.5 is selling it way too short. I think Cruz by 4 is fair, but Trump, I think, is going to win it by more than he won it by in 2020 at a minimum. I'm thinking like 7, 8, somewhere in that range. Byron8899 says, I heard Caroline ran on Real America's Voice that the Senate race in Texas is tight because of McConnell refusing to fund Ted Cruz. Is that true? I mean, I don't think he needs the money, honestly. I think he's going to win. I don't think it's that tight. I mean, if you want my honest opinion, there's not going to be much ticket splitting. It is true that Ted Cruz is weak electorally. He's not liked much, but Trump's on the ticket. Allred is not a good fit for the Hispanic downstate compared to the Operation Beta had back in 2018. I think Cruz is going to do just fine. Underwhelming, but fine. Jaquith Rhymes for 20 says, so much Comrade Kamala Cope in the chat. You know they're losing. Clinton was +8. Biden was +11. Kamala is -2. Landslide, vote early. Yeah, we got to vote. And there's a lot of Cope. I see the dumbest takes ever, and my mind spins around. It's not like I try to imagine their takes being right, because it is true that we want to cover all bases and not be complacent, and we don't want 2022 or whatever. But none of their takes add up. They defy reality. They don't look at the big picture. I see people saying black turnout is through the roof, and then we get the actual numbers, and it's like through the floor. So it's like, and you can tell that it is not through the roof by the way that the Kamala Harris campaign is behaving and acting. And I'm sure that they're going to become more unhinged as the days go by, but we're at a point where it will take an October surprise. What surprise can they find? What is it at this point? People are voting. Like, what are they going to do? Like, what are they going to do at this point? It is currently October 17th. They have thrown Trump. They've thrown everything at Trump. They've convicted him. His numbers went up. It's exhausting for them because, like, what is up next? And I know people will say, and we've seen it before, certain things. We saw it on a golf course. We saw it at a rally. Hopefully we don't see it again, even though they do keep arresting people getting within close vicinity. So you got to protect Trump as well. I think that's important, just as important as getting out to vote. So keep that in mind. But other than that, it's like what do they have? If they can't get their voters out, they can't make people, like, the thing is, and that's another thing Kamala Harris couldn't answer in the interview. Why, if Trump is so bad, why is he winning? Crickets. It's supposed to be close. Well, not really. I mean, if he's that bad and you're that good and your administration is that good and you won't throw him under the bus, but you won't, like, fully embrace it, it's like, what's going on here? They're in a really tough spot conventionally, politically. They do have a saving grace that Donald Trump is somebody who has probably a good half the country that hates him. Now, any other Republican is going to have a lot of other problems, by the way, because they can run an abortion if it's against DeSantis. Can't really do it against Trump effectively. And they'll get their voter base out regardless. That TDS base is going to vote for Harris no matter what. But it may not be enough. And Trump has co-opted the GOP. It's his party. He's basically a generic Republican at this point. And that's something I think people are really kind of struggling to understand. They're numb to it. You're not going to get people outraged at something Trump says in 2024 the way you would in 2015, 2016, or even 2020. It does not work that way. He's done his thing for 9 years, and people are numb to it, and people are numb to the attacks if they're undecided at this point, which, again, you could beg the question, why would you be undecided this late? I get it. I don't think many people are really undecided anyways, which means you got to energize people, and Trump is the best bet to do that. But no, they don't like they don't have arguments that are compelling like they even had in 2020 for the electoral reasoning. Now, a lot of their arguments were unhinged back then as well, especially about Florida. But like, you had a point, like, yeah, the Rust Belt's close. Or you could make a point Biden could win the Rust. And I think Harris still can win. I'm not saying she can't, but it doesn't, the numbers don't really add up. The conventional wisdom about voting patterns and demography, because you could make the case that Biden would do better with those working class whites than Hillary, especially with a pandemic going on. The economy's not as strong as it was, 8 months before the election. That case can be made, but Kamala Harris, after these past 4 years, I really cannot see it. I really can't see it. Ryan is cool high, says, please consistently talk about how Republicans can convince Dems and not to turn out. It's crucial. They're less enthused. Well, look, I don't even understand what you're trying to get at. If they're less enthused, you're trying to convince them to be even less enthused. I would just try to tell them the problems with Harris. I would just try to convince them to vote for, I'd say, put your personal hatred aside. You're not just voting for a man. You're voting for a group of people that are going to be in control. And he's surrounded by a lot of intelligent people who are going to make the government run more efficiently. It's going to be a far better term than his term when he already had a strong economy back in 2016 to 2020. Like, you got to convince them now, or at least convince that Harris is not good as well. I mean, she paid bail for rioters who went on to murder people and has the audacity to complain about 1/6 being a threat to the American public when the only individual who was killed that day happened to be an unarmed Trump supporter. So, these type of things, it's like, I wish there was more calling out on that, but I don't know. She's still not in a good position, but yeah, it is true. And I thought there was a lot of good pushback in that interview that we didn't really see before, and Harris just froze up. Trump this, Trump that. Yeah, no. Doesn't work that way, Kamala. You're about to find out pretty soon. Johnny, Heart Dog for 20. Another 20 from Johnny, saying, were you as shocked as I was with how fair Brett was? My complaint was I wish he was more forceful, but I suppose letting her speak, I wish he'd cut her off more than he did. It was in everyone's best. Well, I think that he was fair enough. I mean, you don't, because you want to be stern to the point where you're going to be able to get your points across, but without, you don't want to be like somebody like Caitlin Collins over at CNN, who railroads everything at every opportunity, because she's not a nice person. We'll leave it at that. We'll be politically correct, but it's true. She's not nice. When it comes down to this, I think he did a good job of getting the points across, letting her talk just enough, and not coming off like he was constantly interrupting. Of course, some Democrats are going to say that he was, because that's just how they are. But no, he was fair enough. I think he was fine. I was worried he'd be less fair. I thought it'd be, not following up with the right questions, because Fox is Fox. But no, he did good. If they have to rage quit, you're doing a great job. They rage quit that interview, and they showed up late, and they called it an ambush. That's impossible. Integrity 28 says, I love you too. I don't believe I've ever seen a super chat from this person, but I love you back. Medic says, I'm still nervous. Any data points you found that are concerning? Not necessarily. I think that you still have the polls close in the Rust Belt, and if you do have a polling error in the Rust Belt, 1%, which is not typically what's happened, but the other way, yeah, I mean, Harris would carry those 3 states, and that would be enough to give her the presidency, and Nebraska would largely be responsible if Trump gets the other states. Now, Pennsylvania, I mean, it's true that there's a lot more time to go in Pennsylvania. Of course, you have a lot of bad faith actors that are trying to claim that 400,000 is enough, even though in 2020 they got 600, or 2022 they got 600,000. Now they're saying 400,000 is enough, even though Trump probably wins the election day vote by more than like what Dr. Oz won it by. Yeah, that's not how it works. And Trump is not Oz. Harris is not Fetterman. There are Trump voters, a good chunk of which did not like Oz because he was a carpetbagger pretty much. And they voted for Fetterman because he looks like one of them and talks like, well, not with the stroke, but the stroke, you could say, is a little bit of sympathy. It's an explanation for it. And the people like us that were like tuned into politics were like, no way people are going to vote for this guy. And well, people did. And I've talked with some people that are very pro-Trump that supported Fetterman. And I honestly think that, it's not the right move, but I can't control everyone's vote. But those people exist for one reason or another, whether people think that they should exist or not. I understand why people would vote for Shapiro, because he ran basically as a moderate Republican running up against somebody who was viewed and portrayed as an abortion extremist and had no money. So that would make sense. Good, like 15, 20% of Trump voters voted for Shapiro. And that's kind of why I think Democrats, a lot of them wanted Shapiro on the ticket. He would not have had the impact some people say he would have had, but he probably would have been a hell of a lot better than Walz on many fronts. Not saying he'd be perfect. Manny says, thoughts on Day Polka's Gen Z Neocon for, I don't know who that is, from USA Today. I don't know who that is. Ash K2 says, if McCormick loses, he'll have my respect for putting in an effort. Pennsylvania Republicans should be proud. Yeah, they should be. He's done a great job. I think he has a decent shot. I really do. So I have a weird feeling about that race and potentially even about Wisconsin. So we'll see. Sophia Lockiss for 5 says, what do you think about Northampton, Pennsylvania? People are scared because it doesn't look great for Republicans there. How does it compare to 2020? Well, I understand why people are worried, but like it's talked about because it's a bellwether county. It's not even necessarily definitive. But the bottom line is Republicans have a lot of ballots there, and across the state they haven't returned, and they need to return them. And at the rate things are going, they will return them. I'm not particularly worried about that, but it's still one of those things that's like a wait and see. But I'm not particularly worried just because the trajectory in terms of the state is currently in the right direction. I actually will look at Northampton County on the other tab here and pull it up and see, because it is true. Like, they'll say the returns are bad because they're below the request, but they're still way above 2020 and 2022, and they were way below the request then. And now they're catching up. And return percentage probably is going to be 30%. I made a model on an Excel spreadsheet. Maybe I'll show you guys some stream. Maybe I'll make it publicly available on like Google Sheets or something. But the one thing that I do know is that it's very difficult to see if Republicans win the election day vote by like 12 or more. It's hard to see Donald Trump lose at the rate things are going. And I mean that. And I think he probably wins the election day vote by that, because there's not this like widespread in-person early voting that Republicans are going to be more likely to use, which I was happy that the Democrat initiatives went through in Michigan and Wisconsin on that, because they're going to backfire. And they're backfiring everywhere. Election month, I always said it, we need to use election month to our advantage, and now people are actually doing it. Kudos to them. I'm glad that they're doing it, and I'm not the biggest fan of it, but if we use it to our advantage, the Democrats are going to they'll be begging to go back to one-day voting. They'll be begging for getting rid of these things, because if we use it, we can use it to our advantage. And when you don't have that many mail-in ballot requests, you have less room for any shadiness, shenanigans of 2020. Which is something a lot of people need to understand, because there's always the crowd that's like, well, what if it doesn't count? It does. See, that mentality is you're being worse than the left, because we're being our own worst enemies when we think like that, and that's kind of a psyop, and we can't do that. But Northampton, we got a question about that, and we have the county data, and currently... Okay, wait, hold on. We need to pull it up by registered party. Okay, so Republicans they've returned more ballots percentage-wise than 2020, significantly, and 2022. Democrats have returned more than 2020 at this point, but there's a lot less mail, significantly less on both sides. It's hard to extrapolate so far. So, again, if people requested in Northampton, they should go return it as soon as they can. And everywhere. It's not just Northampton. That's not the county that's definitive in the state of Pennsylvania. It is a bellwether county, but it is possible that Trump can win without it. It's like if we have to focus our resources and a specific county, probably better actually in Philadelphia, because that's the biggest county. Maybe get what you can out of Allegheny, outer Allegheny, if possible. Buck Hunter 431 says, thoughts in Nebraska Senate race, Fisher wins by 10. I know what the polls show. Let's see. We have another super chat here. I lost them. Got to go back and get them. Yeah, we got a lot of super chats. We are not even halfway through them. That is insane. Carter W15 says chances for a Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania Senate sweep. Honestly, it's probably like 40%, somewhere in that range. Trump has never won a state and the Senate candidate has lost if they're a Republican ever. The only ticket split that went one way or another was actually Maine in 2020, and Maine is weird, and Susan Collins is Susan Collins. Kyle Beckman for 10 says Nate Silver's the Jim Cramer of polling. Yeah, he is. Orange Chicken Girl says Kamala Harris eats corn the long way. Yeah, well, her record would show that that's presumably her preferred method. Riley Moore says, you think Dave McCormick will win the Pennsylvania Senate race? I actually do. Now, I'm not giving a final prediction, but I really do believe that he's going to run about a point behind Trump. And I think Trump right now probably wins Pennsylvania by about a little bit more. It could be recount territory. It's not over for sure. Jimmy Payne for 10 says, Dems are bringing Labor Party members from UK to help. Yeah. And again, if you're a robust ground game, why are you having foreigners? The people that we fought a war to get the hell away from, you're bringing them back here. You think that's going to help? And they're sending them to Virginia. Why would they need to do that? Is it even legal? It probably shouldn't be. If it is, I assume that they're finding some way to do it. That's not good. it's like borderline satire. If it's like actually satire, then I'd be laughing at it. But the ground game party, and I'm not saying underestimate them. You can't. You have to pretend like they have the best one in the world. But if they're really raising $1 billion, where the hell is that going? We're out spending them on ads down the stretch. Now we have put a lot of money in our ground game. Some people say it's a risky strategy to outsource, but I mean, like, does it really matter who's doing it so long as it's being done? Let's be real, but Trump in many ways is a one-man ground game. If he's on the ballot, he's going to get 60, 70 million without a single ad, without a single door that gets knocked. But we got to do what we can to make sure we build on top of that to make sure we get those ballots. But so far, we're doing very well. If they have the robust ground game, where is the early start? There's been no Democrats that have been demonizing early voting. This is not like, Trump in 2020 where he's like attacking the mail-in system, saying election day. And even then, I mean, he told certain people in certain states, vote early, when he went to, I think, Florida, and they did really well in Florida early voting in person. But now in-person early voting is expanding, and now Trump is able to go out there and go to the rallies and go to certain states the days that they start. And it's working out well. This is the final stretch. This is the last dance of Donald Trump. We'll never have another time like that. There will never be another Trump roast at an Al Smith dinner, or after a certain point, another Trump rally when he's at least running for office. So this is indeed the last stand, and I think a lot of people know that are a part of this movement, and they're giving it all for it. And I don't buy the fatigue narrative either, because the data doesn't show it. The favorability polling doesn't show it. And maybe Trump fatigue would be real if the last 4 years weren't so abysmal to the point where Trump was able to run again, in part because he knew that he probably was going to win. Dr. Morbis says whatever happened to the Iowa poll that has a history of being, well, that'll come out eventually. Now, they did their second to last poll last month, and they only had Trump up 4. The only problem is RFK Jr. was getting a ridiculous vote share, and their second to last polls typically are very inaccurate, and they've underestimated Trump twice. So, Seltzer is the gold standard, but they're usually just the gold standard for the final poll. And, even giving Trump the lion's share of those RFK voters, he would be up by like 8 or 9 in that poll. He never led a Seltzer poll by any more than 7, and it was pretty accurate twice. And maybe it's not going to be accurate this time. Every single cycle there's going to be a poll that finally breaks, which is why I tell people the polling error is not a guarantee. Even though I think it's likely that Trump gets the undecideds just because of the state of the Harris campaign. I think they know it too. Apex Caliber says Brit Labor Party members can't. Yeah, we covered that just there. David Baker says Alan Lichtman calling the race for Harris, but I disagree with the decisions on the 13 keys, like the economy not being how people feel. Yeah, and he's not consistent. There's problems with him. A, his model's not being applied consistently, and B, he thinks Harris is going to win Florida. He's too partisan. He lets his partisanship now get in the way of his predictions. You can't do that. Especially at the presidential level, you can't do it, especially if you're not even predicting margin-wise. You're predicting the winner based off of what you claim to be an objective model. You can't do that. And public perception is all that matters. If the GDP growth is 25%, but the public thinks it's in a contraction, when it comes down to election day, it's in a contraction. So they don't understand that, or they did when Bush was running for re-election in the first Bush in 92, but now, no, it doesn't matter. Biden's economy is doing well, they say. And it misunderstands demography, it misunderstands trends, the electorate. He flip-flops. Is it the popular vote or is it the electoral college? I want Trump to win the popular vote so we can't weasel out of this one. Oh, that would be wonderful. What's he going to say? It was Russia again? He'll say Russia? I don't know. Giblet says, do you think the illegal aliens vote? No, illegal aliens will not vote in high numbers. If you're worried about it, I suggest you vote to counteract anything, get other people to vote. But no, look, if they were voting, they would be showing up it'd be showing up in the registration data. That's not happening. The have system thing was debunked. Everything has been debunked. There are more people on our voter rolls now who are citizens that are ineligible than non-citizens that are ineligible, if you want to put that in perspective. The main problem Democrats have with the shady election system are a lot of these harvesting tactics and tricks and nursing homes and stuff like that. People will question how much of it's happening, but it's definitely, if you don't think it's happening, or at least it didn't happen in large quantities or even small quantities is a lot in 2020, I don't know what to tell you. You do have a lot of people that claim they don't remember voting in nursing homes. And you have a lot of people that run nursing homes that are just connect the dots. Okay, connect the dots. Now, could Trump have done things differently? Absolutely. I'm not saying he couldn't have. But still, Democrats do unethical things when it comes down to the election system. And you see it being legitimized when they do it to their own primary system, too. They do it in many ways. They rigged it against Bernie Sanders, and then they did it again against Bernie Sanders. And then they just hand it to Kamala because they knew Biden, you essentially have a soft coup. The will of the voters means nothing to these people. Democracy is not what they actually believe in. They don't believe in democracy. They believe in essentially the opposite. It's an oligarchy where the neoliberal overlords get to decide everything and then shove a piece of garbage down the throats of their own voter base and expect to be rewarded. And I feel like that might explain some of this, because there are Democrats who are not the fondest of Harris, even if they prefer Harris over Trump. That might not be a big number, but it is decisive. It is decisive. Stephen H. says, should there be any worry polls are overestimating like in the midterms? Well, nationally, they didn't in the midterms. They actually underestimated Republicans. Let's be real about that. Secondly, the national vote is much closer, and the presidential election, if you base it off of that, it's like, you're not going to have Pennsylvania voting to the left of New York in some of these races. It's not going to happen. So, no, I don't think you're seeing the same thing. And the polls that were more accurate in the midterms, especially this far out, are showing Trump in a better position than they ever had the Republican candidates for Senate or governor. Like, all the polls that had Whitmer winning by 10 now show Trump winning. Like, you see that there. So I don't think you can compare the two, because midterm polling errors don't really carry over to presidential years. But presidential to presidential did in 2016 and 2020. I'm not even saying we're going to get an error like that again, but it doesn't take one. So long as there's not an error in the other direction, Trump sweeps the board. So I don't know. Ashton Adams says, I'm a first-time voter in Georgia. There we go. Early vote. Get the first-time voters. Make sure they're the ones that go to the polls first. So you know they're going to vote. You know they're going to bank the vote, and that's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. Those 4 out of 4 voters, I don't know if reaching or trying to reach them is the most effective strategy, because they're always usually going to vote. And that's not to say that you shouldn't do any outreach to make sure of it, but, for sure. Colin Shaw, Indie Games, says, what's the best pitch to use for a normie? You should vote early. They think it's 2020. We should surprise the polls. Yeah, I think it's about banking it, and I would just tell them about Arizona in the midterms, because you had long lines, some people going home, all sorts of things, and it's a close race. And I will tell people this: if they hear stories on the news about Arizona on election day and you live in Arizona, still go vote. Like, I don't know why. I saw people on the timeline in the midterms, I'm not voting because of this. It's like, you're helping them. You're literally helping them. What are you doing? But I don't know. Just go vote. Like, it doesn't matter. Even if you think that Trump has no shot, go vote. If you think he's going to win no matter what, go vote, because you never know what can happen regardless. And it doesn't matter if you're in a red state or a blue state. Just vote. That's it. Just vote. So we have a lot of super chats still. I got to speed through these a little bit. Gaming YouTuber Noonan says, will you do a poll watching to make sure Democrats don't? Well, we have people poll watching. And did you see what happened in Detroit? Now it's equal. They sued and they won. Equal poll watchers. And like I said, Whitmer, Shapiro, look, they're acting, especially Whitmer, which Trump roasted at the dinner perfectly. But Whitmer does not, I don't think she wants Harris to win. Why would she be doing the communion mockery, wearing the Harris hat? Like, she's not that stupid. She's not. She wants to run in the future, and she knows that Harris is probably not in a good spot, and she knows that she is somebody that is holding her back. And look, spiteful. Very spiteful. I would not be surprised, especially just given how she operates. Official Moy says, do you think Trump has a shot at Minnesota? Very slim chance. Not ready to go there at all. Antonis Andriotis says, do you think Trump can win 49 states? Absolutely not. There is no shot he even get. If he gets Virginia, that'll be like, wow. 49, no, absolutely not. We are too polarized. We're not the same nation we were back then in terms of the polarization, demography, just all the things that allowed that to happen. You're not going to get. Peter Gabriel, self-suck for 15, says, from the casinos to Lake Mead, Las Vegas shall be freed. Yeah, you know, that phrase the Palestinian protesters use, it's ironically just we did that from our river to our sea with the Manifest Destiny. So it's kind of ironic. Same people that chant death to our nation, their chant actually applies to our nation in a way. Evan Sully says, what makes Pennsylvania such a problem for Harris? Biden's local ties and cultural roots likely helped. Yeah, they don't understand it. And that's the thing. That's a big problem. And the suburbs have working class people in them. How many times do we have to say this? It's like, oh, but the Philadelphia suburbs, guys, they're moving. Where's the evidence they're going to move left from 2020? I'm sure certain parts will. Will white college-educated voters even move left from 2020 by a ridiculous amount? Probably not. I mean, among women they might, but white non-college voters exist in big numbers in places like Bucks County, and even in places like Chester County. There's decent pockets. They don't know what suburbs are. They live in the basement all day. That's their problem. And nuance will get lost on them in 5 seconds when they actually deal with somebody who knows this stuff. Tasmanot's thoughts on Gallup Party ID poll showing R+7. Well, that's just a snapshot in time. The previous 2 weeks were D+5, but when you put it in the average, it's like R+1, R+2. That's the historical indicator for the popular vote. And if Republicans are winning it for the first time ever, going back probably to like the 1980s, that is extraordinarily good news for Donald Trump, because that's far more accurate than polling. Not even close. Jeffrey Bryson for 10 has voted for the first time and voted Trump. See, already we get another. I'm ready to see a huge turnaround in this country, get it back on the right track. Fox ending her campaign was hilarious. Yeah, but I mean, it's momentum. That's the thing. It's momentum. That's all it is. So we just need to just keep going. Like, that's it. This is the home stretch. They've basically now it's 18 days on the East Coast and where I am too, to end the to end her in terms of the campaign. Just finish, please. Hopefully there's nothing that they have that they could try to end Trump on, but I don't know what they would have at this point that would. They emptied the playbook with everything. Insurrection, Access Hollywood, none of it stuck to the guy, especially in the long run. Riley Moore says, Dave McCormick over Bob Casey. Yeah, vote for McCormick. He's doing better than I thought he would. Heart Gold 556 says, New Mexico in play. I wouldn't say that, but those early vote data numbers are phenomenal for Republicans. I think that margin could be cut in half if it keeps up, which is good. The Sandwich Man says, talk about a weak point in Trump's campaign right now, so I know we're not smoke. Well, I don't have a weak point in the data. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty. I'll say that, that may not be as good, even though we've said that about a lot of things, then they keep getting better. I will say, if you want me to say something negative about the Trump campaign or something I do differently, I mean, it exists. I want to see more assassination attempt footage and ads. I feel like that's important. I really think that, keep hitting Harris, mention... If they want to talk about the insurrection or whatever, got to flip it back on her, because what did she do in 2020? She was letting out rioters who committed murder. That needs to be talked about. Why is that not being talked about as much as it could? I mean, it's in the ads. I'm not saying it's not talked about at all, but there are opportunities for Donald Trump to land that I feel like his campaign could do a better job of making sure that he lands those blows, because they will end Harris, and you don't want it to be closer than it needs to be, but we got to vote regardless. So Riley Moore says, hung cow for Virginia, screw Tim Kaine from Pennsylvania. Are you saying he's from Pennsylvania, or are you saying you're from Pennsylvania? Either way, yeah, hung cow. We'll see how he does. His campaign's gotten better down the stretch, but it still will take a lot for that seat to flip. The Jaded Kriegsman says, I feel like regardless of who wins, it doesn't feel like there's any point where the country comes back to... Oh, in terms of that, I mean, we have to take back the institutions. A lot of people are just subservient to the institutions. If we can find a way to actually drain the swamp and retake the institutions in some way, we will have a country that comes together, but it is going to take a very long time. I'm with you on that one. Patriotic Beard for 10 says, any chance Oregon goes red? Nope. I would be the guy to say it. That was a meme back in the day. Very few people here probably remember, because many people are new. But Object Class Keeter says, at this point, Trump saw more combat than walls and will soon work longer at McDonald's than Harris. Yeah, that's a good talking point. Steve Dow says, what's your favorite thought when imagining a Trump victory? Well, we'll see. I don't want to get too much into that, but yours is wiping away the smug look on Jack Smith's face when he gets fired. Well, that would be something. But, I mean... Mark Halperin, I saw him on Tucker, and he was on the left, and he still, I guess, kind of is to an extent, but he's reasonable, and he was the first one to get the Biden dropout story leaked and almost perfectly correct. At the time, it was perfectly correct. They moved some things around, I feel like, and he said by this time, Trump would reemerge as the favorite by preying on the weaknesses of Harris, and the more airtime she gets, the worse it gets, and that's exactly what's happening right now. That's what's going on. So we'll see. I Am Cheryl says, October surprise will be more fake sexual allegations. See, I don't know if that's smart for them, because the problem that they have already is the male vote, and they're acknowledging it. And the more they try to address it, the worse it's getting for them, because they're so out of touch. It's laughable. But if they're going to do that, they already tried. Like, that's the thing. And it didn't work the last time when you had a woman that was their nominee and then tried that. What makes you think it's going to be it now? Unless there's like video evidence of which it would have been released a long time ago, and it did not happen, as we know. Christian Lal says, hope Robinson wins. Nothing wrong with, he says nothing wrong with being a freak. Those are his words, not mine. Also hope Lake wins too. I think Trump can carry her over the line. Yeah, I mean, if Trump wins Arizona by like 4, it's possible. It'll take a slight polling miss in that direct. It could happen. I'm not saying it can't, but I would not look at the down ballot polls as definitive. I would look at the presidential polls and then ask myself, which demographics is Lake going to do worse with, better with, if any, and go from there, and by how much. Because the down ballot polls are kind of useless because they've been wrong. The presidential level is where I'd gauge it. Kyle Beckman for 10 says, crystal ball and breaking points was coping, saying Kamala's support from white women will give her the win. Well, Trump actually did better with white women overall in 2020 than he did in 2016. There's a difference between your white woman, suburban wife that lives in Macomb County, Michigan, and somebody who lives in Nova who is like the stereotypical childless cat lady, as Vance put it, to much unnecessary controversy from the media. I said this last stream. The only demographic, if you break it, the demographics of the nation down by male and female, married and unmarried, that votes Democrat is unmarried women. Married women vote Republican, unmarried men and married men both vote Republican. But unmarried women, that's the demographic that votes Democrat substantially. So, it is true that she's going to have support there, but it's a little bit deeper than that. Ash K2 says on Destiny stream, Alan Lichtman was excited about whites becoming a minority. As an Asian American, I find it weird white liberals are happy. Well, of course they are. Look, they care about power, and they know that certain demographics are going to be more favorable to them electorally. And the fact you have somebody like that tries to pass themselves off as an objective analyst for an election and they come up with outlandish, inconsistent, because that's the thing. If you're biased as hell, but you have a model you stick with and you're consistent throughout your career, I could respect it and I'd look into it and I'd say, okay, well, maybe this has a point. But if you are that hackish and you're becoming increasingly hackish, for one, for two, you're inconsistent, and three, detached from reality, then you lose your credibility. If Harris wins, he gets no credit. I'm not giving him an ounce of credit if Harris wins, because his model is still not applied fairly or consistently. And the people don't see the economy as good. So if Harris wins, maybe it's the hidden abortion vote the other guy talked about. It wasn't even that big in 2022 in places where Republicans did not run abortion hardliners. They did very well in most places, especially when they weren't running against incumbent governors. CCM28 is from the Men for Harris ad in the video at the Al Smith dinner. It's to be clear that the campaign is run by alphabet theater kids. The theater kids, they're out of touch. Like, how is that supposed to win over the disaffected white guy in Wisconsin? It's not. I don't even know if it wins over, a college-educated white woman who's on the fence. I don't think it really does if they voted for Trump twice, let alone once. So, yeah, it's about turnout, who switches their vote, how the new voters break. It's about a lot of things this election. The 610 Stig for 20 says Pennsylvania's tricky. Dems run on abortion and tax cuts for billionaires. Only two ads you see. That's what we see here too. Down ballot Republicans are worse on abortion policy, which hurts Trump. I don't think it would hurt Trump in the burbs if the down ballot Republicans are worse. There's no reverse coattails, do not exist. Still a lot of Trump signs in Northampton, Lehigh, and Buck. Yeah. But no, the down ballot Republicans are not going to hurt Trump on abortion. If anything, they will hurt themselves, because Trump himself is not a abortion extremist. Democrats were seething when he came out and basically said, I'm leaving it to the states. And he's right. It's an issue it's a culture war issue that need not be nationalized. It's not constitutional for it to be nationalized, and he's technically right. So they find these freak accidents that happen and try to use it against Trump, and then you read into it, and it's like, well, this person still could have gotten this procedure. This person still could have, there's things usually that are complications that are outside of the narrative of the main story. So, and it's like, if somebody has to go to another state to have an abortion, even if you are pro-abortion, like, why is that a big deal to you? Usually, especially given the fact that these liberal organizations will pay for it for some reason, because it's a mess. I don't want to get into the gruesome details, but I will say that it's 100% just insane to say that that's a big deal. Like, that basically means you think somebody should be getting multiple abortions and that it should be a regular thing, and that's not good. That's not, it's just not. You don't get to go on this bloodthirsty rampage because you're irresponsible. That's essentially what it is. And that's how a lot of Americans view it. And if you look at the science, they're right. That's not looking at, biblical stuff or faith, which I think is important too, but that's looking at the actual science of most of these abortions. Science has not been kind to the pro-choice movement, pro-abortion movement, and the science usually should be in their corner, given the fact that a lot of science has an agenda. Big science has an agenda, and we know that. They do. That's why you see certain old studies get memory hold. New ones won't get released unless it fits it's just like polling. Polling's a science, and polling's a mess. And people think the field of science is all run smoothly, and it's just a conspiracy, or you're like anti-intellectual for saying that. No, I'm not saying everything is inaccurate. I'm saying that there's a reason to be skeptical. But even then, it's not looking good for the pro-abortion individuals. Tom Saff says, I'm concerned illegals. Well, you have to get out and vote to counteract it. Now, like I said, it'd be showing up in the registration data in Texas. It's not. Now, I know people will point to that one story that is not accurate, but there have not been that many new people, and especially compared to leading up to 2020 in Texas, where there were a lot of new registrations. Now there's not as many, and the new ones probably are voting Republican. What would be funny is if the illegal aliens were voting and they actually voted for Trump, because I don't know, maybe the economy is just so bad they want to go back home. I don't know. But would it be surprising? I don't know. They did an interview with some guy, and they interviewed him. He's an illegal alien. He said, "Oh, Trump's policy was," they said, "Oh, it was offensive, racist," but they said, "Oh, they prefer him as president to Biden." Pretty funny. So I don't know. That would be funny if they did show up and voted for Trump, but I don't think they're going to be voting in numbers that people think they will be. I'm sure some will get through the cracks, but we gotta, we got to beat it. Christian News Junkie says, do you think Kamala's a true believer in wokeness or a grifter that wants to? Well, I think she doesn't have a conviction. I think her conviction is just power. She's a very incompetent person. It is true that she may not have believed what she said in 2019, but the people that are around her when they get into power, that's basically what they believe. And even if not, if we're, the best case for Harris is just 4 more years of Biden, and that's exactly what she doesn't want to be. And probably you get some of those other crazy things because she's not disavowing her old positions on most topics. The one thing she said was she's not going to support decriminalizing border crossings anymore or something like that. But I mean, at the end of the day, people are pouring, it doesn't even matter. Her record is atrocious on that topic. Mitchell Ryan says, did you hear about the DOD change? I did not hear about that at all. Apex Caliber says, who told Harris that video was smart? People who probably want her to lose. I'm not kidding. I'm not just saying it to say it. This is bad. If she wins, I don't get it. I just don't. Especially if it's a close race. I just don't get it. People need to vote. Because there's nothing that's looking good for her. There's not. But we got to vote. CCM 28 says rural's turning out like crazy in Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia. Wouldn't be surprised if Wisconsin votes to the right of Pennsylvania. At this point, Trump he could take it by that margin. I'm not ready to go there yet. But, if there's going to be a polling miss in any state, polling miss the half of which we've seen the last 2 cycles, you would be pretty much on the money. And obviously, we don't have our final polling aggregate. And the swing states there's more Republican polls in there than the national polling, but I don't buy the zone flooding theory because it's trash. And the same polls that were accurate in 2022 nationally that underestimated Trump twice, those same polls show Trump in many cases winning the popular vote. Now, not every poll shows it, but it's the polls that were even way off in 22 that are showing a Harris +4. So, yeah, it's a mess. Old School says Dems aren't democratic. They're totalitarians. Jaded Kriegsman says I'm working as an election judge in Minnesota. It kills me. An ID would make it easier, but they just parrot how ID is bad. Yeah, how do they think it's bad? How do they think it's bad if it's the basic thing? People buy alcohol with an ID. They go buy a lottery ticket with an ID. They buy cigarettes with an ID. They get into the movie theater with an ID. To say, even if it's just one illegal vote that it stops, it's worth it. Voter ID is basic, it's easy, and we've done studies on this. It does not decrease the turnout of the groups that they claim it does, like black voters, for example. It doesn't decrease. It does not suppress their turnout. It's fake. It's a fake narrative. So Simon says, how much do you think Trump would have to win Wisconsin and Michigan to carry Hovde and Rogers? I don't know. I lean towards around 2 in Wisconsin. Michigan, Rogers could outrun him. It's an open seat. Rogers might do better in Oakland County. He might do better in even parts of Wayne. Slotkin is arguably more hated by the Muslim community than Harris is. And then you have Kent County and Ottawa where Rogers will do significantly better than Trump. That's where John James really outran him, and James outran Trump in 2020. So, and he was running up against an incumbent. Although not a lot of people even still know who Gary Peters is. Humanoid Gaming says, how do I convince my friend in college who's Catholic, hates Trump, but disagrees more with Democrat policies? He thinks Project 25 is real. Well, it's not. You could play the clips. Show him the Politico article of them saying Trump is kicking these people out of the administration, which honestly, I have mixed feelings about that. But you just have to tell them they're voting for a group of people in their policies. Were you better off under Trump or Biden? That's what matters. Harris is not going to do anything different. She will make things worse. And with Donald Trump, you get 4 years of Trump. You never have to hear from him again. Harris is probably going to be there for 8 years, and her policy, you have all these people coming in. You talk about a democracy, we're becoming a one-party state because of all these people pouring into the country, and Harris wants to give them amnesty, a path, they say path to citizenship, that's amnesty. She doesn't want to deport anybody, and she says, oh, we need tougher border security. Well, the problem is that a lot of these people are already here. You're like, border crossings are down. Well, why are they down? Maybe because A, there's a lot of them here already, and B, because Donald Trump is a good chance he comes back in. So why are people going to be crossing now when they could be crossing maybe in a few months when they know if Harris does actually pull it out, that's when they're going to be able to have a little bit more of a safe haven. Humanoid Gaming says, okay, we did that one. Scott B says, Dems hate each other. The one thing that brings them together is evil Blumph. Yep, it's true. Riley Moore says, LTE is going to cry like a... Well, that's his business. CCM28 says, Alan Lichtman will be wrong again. Maybe. Jabe Shepard says, do you think Harris will win Central PA? Some YouTuber said they saw a surprising amount of hair. Well, look, yard sign analysis doesn't mean much. She's not getting any, like if you see them in Central PA, like in Center County, yeah, she'll win Center County. It's a college town, not from the college kids. It'll be no thanks to the kids. It'll be thanks to the professors and the professional class that lives there in State College. The kids usually vote at their home addresses, and they're becoming more and more Republican. But it depends. Like Central PA, rural Michigan, I mean, there's 2 Harris signs I saw on a drive that I've done 2-3 election cycles in a row. And the Trump signs are ridiculous. I couldn't even believe what was happening. It's like Trump, 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 Trump. That's crazy. Murrow Boy says, I live in New York City. Would I vote? Would my vote make it? Yes, please vote. I don't care where you live. Hawaii, California, New York City. We want to make the margins in New York closer. It would be nice to do that. So vote. If you're not registered and the deadline isn't passed, register now. Vote.gov. Do it now. Go to the website. Gaming YouTuber Noonan says, did the voter rolls get cleaned? Yeah, Nevada, they got cleaned. Arizona, they largely got cleaned as well. I know people will talk about the recent revelation. The problem with that is that a lot of the people in that vote dump that did not show proof of citizenship, most of them are white people that are Republican in their mid-40s. So it's probably better that they stayed on the rolls than be taken off the rolls. But it does show that if it's that insecure, there probably are some people that have been doing it for a while, which I think is more of an issue. But we are probably going to win Arizona at this point. It's still too early to make that call. I haven't done my final prediction, but DB Cooper 44 says, are you concerned about the reindeer games on election day or faithless electors? If it's close, I think flip-flop, Kamala loses will be the end. Need the win for SCOTUS integrity. I'm not worried about faithless electors. I think if Trump wins, I really think he's going to get above 270, and they can remove electors. And some states they're illegal now, so I don't know. Antanas Andriatis says, if Biden was still running, you think Trump could win any blue states because of Biden's dementia? What made us want to vote more for Biden than Trump? Well, the problem is you had a tumultuous time in 2020 and a slew of election law changes and maybe a little bit of other stuff too that was, but it wouldn't be that close if it was legitimate. But Biden he stayed in the basement. That's what helped him because he was the generic Democrat. And now Kamala Harris can't do that. She doesn't have that luxury. Biden doesn't have that luxury. He has a record. Even if he stays in the basement, he'd lose. But I don't even know if these blue states, look, there's a timeline where Biden gets the nomination, he gives a fiery DNC speech, and the media is like, he's back. And I'm not saying he would have won, but there's a chance you'd end up with the same map. And I think that people can realize that if Harris is truly in free fall, which, momentum can shift back, but it's not quite there. There's a good shot. There's a good shot that Biden could have done better. I really can't believe I'm saying it, but it'll depend on the end result. It'll depend on how well she does in eastern Pennsylvania, for example. Antonis for 10 says, if you don't mind me asking, what was the first presidential election you voted in? Why did the media think Trump was never going to win on election night 2016? Well, because they believe their own nonsense, and they largely still do. And that's their thing. Now, as for the first election I voted in, that was 2020, or the presidential. I voted in 2018 as well before that. But I voted in the presidential election in 2020 on election day for Trump. So this year will be an early vote to bank early, but we are voting for sure. Be my most excited vote ever to date, for sure. And I was enthused in 2020, but it's like now it's a different ball game because it didn't really feel like, oh, this is the last election or whatever at the time, even though I was very afraid and correct at some of the things that would happen. I didn't think Biden's administration would be this bad as it's become, though. Like, that's the thing. I didn't think you'd have the border crisis. And it's true. And you look at Europe, everywhere you have a crisis, the right-wing populists do better, even if they're smaller parties. But Trump has made this a nationally electable, national populist party. And you'd think he'd do better. And they do better with younger voters, even with minority voters in those places. They typically do better. And Trump is doing the same thing. It defies the logic of the media, but it is largely true. CCM 28 says a Pakistani-American PAC endorsed Trump. I'm not surprised. Again, a lot of Muslim voters are conservative socially, and they feel betrayed because of Gaza or some other stuff. And, Trump is the peace candidate. That's why you have people that are on the Israel side and the Palestine side that are both saying, we need peace in the region, stability in the region. And they know that if America loses that edge, then the whole world does too. And yeah, you will have China go after Taiwan if Harris wins, maybe even before she gets inaugurated. I will predict that, and I hope I'm wrong because I hope she doesn't. Hopefully we don't even have to assess it. Our Dog Shows has just joined the stream. What do you think of active vote having trouble at 12 in Texas? States poll has Harris taking. States polls. He's special. We'll call him special. He is. I can't. I don't want to get into some of that analysis because it's not good. It's just not good. Sometimes people get their brains broken and then they become even more special. Crescent says, would you please consider going on Rich Barris as people's... Well, ask him. I would love to go on if he would like to have me. I watch Barris. I watched him on Monday. I watched him Wednesday. I look forward to watching him tomorrow. Simon says, do you agree with Halpern's analysis that Harris is still favored in Nevada? And well, I don't even think that's what he said. He said that that's her best swing state. And I don't know if that's true. I think Michigan is still probably her best bet. Because, look, I trust Ralston on Nevada and even realize that he's got a slight bias and he won't even give a tie to the Democrats anymore. And he says his scale is broken, which tells me Trump is winning. Now, Jackie Rosen probably wins over Sam Brown, and it's sad. And I think we kind of know why that might be the case, unless there's just a shy Sam Brown vote. But yeah, it is what it is. But they've been running a campaign that's been brutal on that topic, and it's kind of gross, but they'll do anything to win. Tucker Cornegay says, I'm an RN in a nursing home. The list of patients will be voting via mail and had patients on it that didn't know their name the year or couldn't lift a pen to sign it if they knew what it was. Yeah, you should, I would report that stuff. And that is true. They've looked into it in Kenosha. And Wisconsin, it was rampant. And there was, again, if you look at the precinct map, there are irregularities. And I tell people this that are skeptics, and people think I don't believe in shenanigans for some reason because I'm not willing to embrace some more, outlandish theories about it because I think that they discredit actual shenanigans. And you had people that were on Trump's team that worked to sabotage him with this Kraken nonsense. And Tucker Carlson accurately called out those people, and he got a lot of hate from a lot of people on the Trump side, but he was largely proven correct. And some of those people threw Trump under the bus in some of these cases too. But there are legitimate gripes, and it is true the courts may not listen to them, but you're less likely to get any standing when you have people that are putting out not lawsuits but lawsuits. And we saw a lot of that. So I'd tell people keep the eye on the ball. State legislature should have done a better job of assessing it. But you know what? I hope Trump wins. And if Trump wins, I am glad that things would have gone this way because, look, another 4 years of Trump back then obviously the country would be better off by far. I'm not saying it wouldn't, and I'm not saying that people haven't, but just imagine if you had 4 years of Trump, you'd have administration full of these warmongering, disloyal neoconservatives and globalists. And are you exactly going to have as good of a term as you would this final form of Donald Trump on the revenge, where he might actually have a resounding victory if he gets the popular vote? He's got a mandate, a different place in history, and he'll be like 3 for 3 if he wins, which he's got every right to. And I always say, there's an old saying in basketball, ball don't lie. If you really committed the penalty, then, or if you didn't commit the penalty, then they're going to miss the free throws. That's what it means. And if Trump wins, I think he gets vindicated on 2020, regardless of whatever people want to think about it. They want to agree with me, disagree with me. I think my stance is fair and accurate. You talk about out of millions of votes cast, all these new voters, all these mail-in votes after these laws are changed. And that doesn't even get into the big tech censorship or anything like that. It just takes a small number is what I'm saying. It's not like this outlandish thing. There's a lot of they'll say misinformation. I don't like using that term, but there's a lot of fake news on our side that it's used to discredit legitimate concerns, but those legitimate concerns exist. And if we had politicians that could articulate that more properly, instead of either having to like fully cave or whatever, I feel like we probably would have done a little bit better in the midterms on both fronts, by the way. So let's see. That's it for Super Chats, I believe. Oh, we have another one. Temporal forces. And we'll look in regular chat for about a few minutes because we've been going on for far too long. Temporal forces for 10 says, hi, Rep. 4 more years of Trump would have so many great moments to be had. America's 250th, and that's another thing, 250th Independence Day, G7 Summit, World Cup, and opening the Olympics. Please vote. It's true. And also, folks, if people are on the fence, we need strong leadership. That's the strongest argument for Trump. Strong leadership. Do you want somebody who gets pushed around and quits an interview that's slightly adversarial and has zero, her existence in politics, it's become an affront to meritocracy? Or do you want this guy right here? You can get the shirt at shop.redeaglepolitics.com and the mug. We'll do the shameless plug. But, you have, Trump is like, he embodies the American dream. He embodies what we've lost and what we can get back. But you don't get that back if you go the other way. Yeah, he's loud. Yeah, people think, well, he's not even that he's not that much of like a, he's not that brash, I would say, in terms of how he comes across. He's not that abrasive at this stage in the game. And I think that might help him, especially because like the podcast appearances, they humanize him, whatever. He's more like he's more like a grandfather now, not in like a Biden way, but in like a, he's wise way. And he still has energy. He's still youthful, but he doesn't, he's a different Trump than he was 8 years ago for the better in many ways. But yeah, no, I fully believe people need to understand that he's strong. He gets shot and he's golfing the next day. I mean, he's somebody that's a legend. And I think people can respect that about him. And Kamala Harris was asked the same question that they asked at the second Trump-Hillary debate about what are your positive qualities. And Trump was asked the same thing. And Kamala just trashed him and said, oh, his family. Same thing as Hillary. This is the Netflix version of Hillary that we see. And it's like, okay, you miss a political layup. Because you could at least say, he was resilient, and maybe she actually would win people over with that answer, because it shows that maybe she does care about people that disagree. But that's not how she came across. She missed a layup. Now Trump, on the other hand, he tried to find things, which it's kind of hard. We don't really know her that well in politics, but he said something similar, like it takes a certain. He basically said that she was lucky that she was anointed the nomination, and that she has like a lot of long-lasting friendships, and that she's like has a personality that he finds to be somewhat pleasant at times, but also that, not really strong for the nation, which is true. Even if you happen to think she's not that bad personally, which I don't even think people can understand what she's saying, these word salads and all, but she's not fit for the job, and it's a hiring process. And when you're hiring prospects for a job, you can't just hire the person who's is nice. You might need to hire the person who's abrasive but is good at the job. You're gonna pass over the like, let's say you're in a draft room and you're trying to draft a player. You got the number 1 pick. You have the best prospect ever, best quarterback. He's known for being a little bit of an asshole, according to some people. Not saying Trump really is. I mean, kind of is, but like in a good way. I mean, I like it. Some people don't. That's their prerogative. But if you have that star quarterback, the best of all time, best quarterback in the draft, you need one. You have to have one. You don't have one, or you're going to take the really the weak candidate that is like the bust, doesn't have the vital statistics for the position, but they're nice. They didn't have a DUI or something. Like, obviously, you got to go big. Like let's not be stupid here. It's just an IQ test. Like, folks, you're hiring for the job, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here a little bit. But in terms of what people can tell people, you're trying to hire a candidate that's going to be a better president. That's all you're trying to do. And by the way, when they bring up abortion, it's a state issue now. You're not going to fix it. You're not going to be able to codify it. There will never be the votes for that. You're not going to flip the Supreme Court most likely in one term either. She'd have to pack the court that's extremely unpopular and dangerous for various reasons. So it's just the way it is. So we have a few more super chats. Riley Moore says, I took off November 5th so I could vote and watch Democrats cry on election day. Everyone go vote. Trump, Vance, and hopefully you're watching the stream. We'll be having probably, we're going to break, I think our record is like a little bit under 30,000 in 2020. Hopefully we could break that for live viewership. But we have more super chats pouring in. We'll try to get to these quickly, and then I know we got to end. It's about to be 1:30 in the morning on the East Coast, and we still have 2,000 viewers. Ragdoll MMA says, what do you think about Maryland 6? I saw an internal poll that has Parrott ahead. I was surprised, and Trump is ahead too. So who knows? Who really knows? But that is good news as well. Crescent says, so many people quit being my friends over supporting Trump. Has this happened to anyone you know? I've been pro-Trump since 16. Not really. I had some people that are friends. I guess you'd say they're more on the left. Not many of them, but that was a long time ago. And, we disagreed and I guess grew apart. We never let it get in the way. But they weren't like, they probably were more, I guess you would say they weren't as woke on certain things as a lot of other people, but they were not Trump fans. Maybe they are now. I don't know. They could be, given what's going on, but I haven't talked to them in a while. But it happens. People lose friends and family over politics, and it is a problem. But a lot of it does come from, I feel like, the left more so than the right. Maybe a little bit on the right as a reaction to it, but it does largely come from the left. And it's kind of why they're able to kind of dictate what's socially acceptable more because of it. I don't know. Sven Olsen says, thoughts on Maine second. We're going to win that in the presidential race. We'll see I think it's a toss-up at the House level. Ranked choice voting puts a wrench in things, but you never know. Alexander Carlson says, saw something on the quartering about Facebook censoring. Well, Facebook is going to still do that. I'm not saying they're not. But is it going to be to the level it was in 2020? No, because they have to compete with Elon, and they don't want to lose market share. So they can't do what they did before. And Zuckerberg is apparently not as politically active now. The algorithm is going to do what it does. They're going to have the fact checking. Meta is still largely liberal. I'm not saying it's not, but like we forget how bad it was back then. And I'm not saying it can't get back to that. If Trump loses narrowly, they're going to try to use the DOJ to go after Elon. Trump wins, he better clear out the DOJ or they're still going to go after Elon. They're still going to be going after him. But it's like at some point they have to be exhausted. I mean, how many years is this going to go on trying to get this guy? And even then, if he wins, Mark Halperin's right about the mental breakdowns. Maybe not as, I don't think it's going to happen as much with like the median person. That's like on the left, obviously like the hardcore resist libs and the Project 2025 fear-mongering people will, because they live in an alternative reality. You're never going to reach those people. But I don't know. It's just the people that have been doing this, they're going to be exhausted. They will be exhausted. They're going to be investigating him into the long after he's gone. He'll be older than Jimmy Carter, and they'll still be investigating him. Riley Moore says, I want to rep and rap stream. I mean, I don't know. My schedule's packed. If he wants me on, that's his business. I know we'll be doing a fundraiser for the polls. And if you guys want to donate to our polling fund, you can. The link's in the description. We are going to be working on that. We're going to do a fundraiser, I think, tomorrow with OPP on his channel for it, as we've done before. But let's see. Evan Sully says, is there a chance Democrats in Congress don't certify? Well, they don't have a majority, so they can't do that. I mean, there will be a few that won't, but there were a few that didn't in 2016, and people forget. But they will. There will be a lot of election deniers on the left for the next 4 years if Trump wins. Make no mistake about it. And honestly, if we're on the right, it's like, do we even have to acknowledge Kamala Harris as a legitimate president if she was installed? Like, that's another thing, but hopefully we don't get to that point. Because that could be used if we have Congress to stifle the entire agenda. CCM28 says, subscribe, like, and get your Trump gear before it's over. Another thing about the cabinet appointees is I could be wrong about this, and you're right about the gear. And we sell some at shop.redeaglepolitics.com. If you want to buy Trump's official stuff, that's good too. But we got some cool designs. I love this mug. But no, what were we talking about? I know it's getting late, but the certification. It's good. Yeah, the pendulum will likely swing back. They will likely swing back. So, like I said, until then, we just got to vote. Nothing matters in the meantime. You got to vote. It is not over. It is far from over. This is, I mean, we're close to the finish line, but still. But the thing I was going to ask, and I could be wrong, we'll end on this note, the cabinet. Do they even have to change the cabinet? Because you talk about appointees, it's going to be the same administration, right? I mean, the cabinet, you have to get rid of the people, resign, I would assume. I could be wrong. Didn't Trump keep the VA secretary on that was a Republican from Obama's second term? I could be wrong about that, at least for a little while. But think about that. I mean, in terms of the appointees, they're not going to have to accept any if that's the case. And I could be wrong. But I don't know if there's anything about the cabinet heads in the Constitution. They have to go when the term is over. It's not, in my view, how it works. That's why you had a lot of holdovers from the Obama years in the Trump years. So, oh well. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up. It's been 2 hours. It's been a really good show. We'll be back. We will be back. I will be streaming probably on Sunday. And then we might stream more often as we get closer. But anyways, guys, like the stream before you go. Subscribe, hit the bell. I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle out.